Tonight, I'm very excited to welcome Ruth Harkin to talk about her book, When My Husband Ran for President and Other Short Stories. Ruth Harkin was elected county attorney of Story County, Iowa in 1973 and served until 1979. From 1979 to 1981, she served as a deputy counsel for the United States Department of Agriculture, prior to joining the Washington law firm of Akin, Gump, Strauss, Hauer, and Feld, LLP in 1983. In 1993, President Bill Clinton named her chair and chief executive officer of the Overseas Private Investment Corporation. Harkin left the government and became senior vice president for international affairs and government relations of United Technologies in April 1997. In 2002, she became a director of ConocoPhillips. Harkin was a member of the Iowa Board of Regents from 2005 to 2015. She was inducted into the Iowa Women's Hall of Fame in 2018. Harkin will be in conversation with Charlie Cook. Cook is widely regarded as one of the nation's leading authorities on U.S. elections and political trends. Charlie founded the independent, nonpartisan Cook Political Report in 1984. Cook is also a co-author of the 2020 and 2022 editions of the Almanac of American Politics. Please join me in welcoming to Politics and Prose, Ruth Harkin and Charlie Cook.
Wow, look at this crowd. This is awesome. Yeah, I should write a book someday. This is good. This is very cool. Thank you all for coming out. What a great turnout on a beautiful day. Ruth asked me over the Christmas holidays, I read the galleys for this, and I was just laughing out loud when I read it because it was just like so awesome. And Ruth insists that someone suggested to her the title of the book. I have my doubts about that. I think, but Tom, you're a great sport. I'll tell you that. But this is just such a fun book, and I've known Tom and Ruth for 35 or so years, and I knew little bits and pieces, but didn't know the backstory, and I didn't expect this to be quite as fun as it is, and I think you'll all got to get a kick out of it. It's not. It's too bad we're past August because it would be a fun beach book, and but it certainly would make good Christmas presents for everyone. So anyway, but you will find, and to me the most interesting thing was how Tom and Ruth met. And she, I don't want to rob your story. It's a fun one, yeah. But I think you guys are really, really, really going to enjoy it. And you know what special people Ruth and Tom are. The kind of career, the public service that both of them have done is amazing. And I want to correct one thing on the introduction. Ruth was elected Story County DA in '72. She was sworn in '73. So let's not cut her political career in half. And took one for the team when Tom got elected to Congress. So. But they're an amazing couple and just great dear friends, and I'm just really excited about this, and I hope you will. But you will be chuckling when you read this. You really, really, really will, and you will see. You read books and you think, I know that person. He didn't write that. This is Ruth from start to finish. Wicked humor from start to finish. So I'm sure you'll love it. But anyway, let me turn this over to Ruth because that's who you came to hear.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Charlie, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you for being here. Writing is really a solitary pursuit. So it's a little daunting to be sharing your writing with a group of people. But I'm happy that you're here, and I'm happy to be sharing it with you. When I started putting together some of these vignettes I've been writing over the years, I had really thought of having them really for my daughters and my grandchildren. And I hadn't really thought about a wider distribution. But friends persuaded me that other people might be interested in some of these vignettes, so I decided to enlarge the group a little bit more and want to share them with you. One of the things that I wanted to inspire with my daughters and my grandchildren, really take the path less traveled. And if you aren't having any fun doing what you're doing, stop doing it and do something different. And so that's sort of been my theory in life, and I've been very lucky to have some great opportunities, and so let me share them with you. I want to start out reading, and I'm going to read about 3 or 4 things from the book, and they're all quite short. But the first one I want to share with you is The Perfect Job. My college roommate, Diane, and I had endless conversations about the jobs we would get once we graduated from college. These conversations were usually held over 3-2 beer in college bars around the University of Minnesota. Although Europe was our target destination, getting out of Minnesota was key. We had never been anywhere else, but surely there were places in the world where men appreciated us and there was no potential for snow in May. One day, Diane excitedly told me about the perfect job for us. The U.S. Army employed civilians to manage service clubs for enlisted men stationed on Army post. There were several positions available in Germany, and one of the perks was an opportunity to catch free hops on military planes around Europe. We could vacation in other countries for free. It sounded ideal. The qualifications were straightforward: female, single, with a bachelor's degree. Now, back in 1966, there was sort of a small group in that category. I went for my interview downtown at the St. Paul Post Office wearing my best dress and heels. The interview was conducted by 2 career special service females in their 50s, which seemed quite old to me. At the interview progressed, they asked if I might be interested in working in Southeast Asia. You mean Vietnam? I asked. No, dear. We don't send women to Vietnam. We were thinking of Korea. Well, that didn't sound nearly as good as Europe. Besides, Diane and I had a plan. The interview continued as we discussed positions in Germany. This opportunity was a real possibility upon graduation. I could imagine doing this job, and I think they could imagine me doing it. They would get back to me. On the way out the door, on pure impulse, I turned around and said, "Sign me up for Korea." Then I hopped on the bus home and ran into the house looking for a map. Where the hell was Korea? Well, they sent me to Korea and to an army post that was 9 miles from the DMZ. And I was at a camp called Camp Hobie, and with a brigade of men, and only men were in the military serving in this location at this time. So it was 2,500 men, and I was the only woman at this location. My job was to entertain with a nightly program at my service club enlisted men who are by and large 19 or 20 years old without the benefit of liquor, women, and cars. But and it was a great job, and I really had a lot of fun. And along the way, I went for an R&R to Tokyo. Now, at that point, Tokyo was modern and glitzy and wonderful. None of the backwardness of Korea. And so I checked into the lap of luxury at the Tokyo Hilton. It was fabulous. And right next to it was a Shinto shrine. And they were having a little carnival one day. and I wandered through the grounds of this beautiful shrine, and they were selling snow cones and cotton candy. The cotton candy was irresistible, and I happily continued my stroll around the grounds, eating it. Say, could I have a bite of that cotton candy? I heard a voice ask. I turned around to see a great looking guy smiling at me. Sure, I said, surprised to hear a Midwestern accent. Where are you from? We discovered that we were fellow Midwesterners from towns of less than 400 people apart. He was a Navy pilot stationed at Atsugi Naval Air Base near Tokyo from Iowa, and I was from Minnesota. When he asked, dinner really seemed like a no-brainer. Our conversation at dinner was fun. We bantered about Iowa and Minnesota, the war, politics, you name it. And toward the end of the meal, things took an unexpected turn. You know, I live in a place called Dreamland, he smiled. I laughed. Are you kidding? Want to bet? We drove out of Tokyo down winding country roads in almost total darkness, except for the headlights of his car. What was I thinking? I do make impulsive decisions, but this wasn't reasonable. Dinner, yes, but not heading out into the countryside late at night in search of this dreamland with a total stranger. What could possibly come of this? Finally, he pulled up to a 12-story pagoda. He guided me through the lobby, and we took an elevator to the 12th floor. We walked through the suite to the lobby, or to the balcony. Here we are. Look down, he said. It was an amusement park, and there it was in huge neon lights. Dreamland. So we had met by chance, and when we married a year later, July 6, 1968, in Des Moines, Iowa, we sort of joked that this might only last a year, rolling our eyes and laughing. Everything seems so temporary. Our basement apartment, our rented furniture, and our temporary jobs. These would all disappear by next year, and so might we. We organized a small wedding for 12 attendees, no invitations, no photographer unless you counted my sister-in-law. I bought a wedding dress for $39 2 days before the wedding. The only criteria, it had to fit. And by Monday, we were back at our temporary jobs. What was our game plan? We were going to support ourselves, get advanced degrees, and travel. And yes, Tom had a vague idea about running for political office at some point. What office and from where were not articulated. Children? So far out there, not even worth discussing. It sounds a bit fragile now that I think about it. So, it seemed just right to be celebrating our 50th anniversary at the high shrine where we met. Our plan was to gather our daughters, sons-in-law, and 3 grandchildren on site and enjoy a champagne toast. The 2 priests at the shrine said that this would never do. This is a shrine symbolizing and celebrating long marriages, 50, 60, and even 70 years. Since this is your golden anniversary and you met here, we will perform a full Shinto ceremony complete with a formal dance performed by 2 shrine maidens in official attire. The ceremony will be followed by a Japanese luncheon with sake. Then you can have the champagne. We met at a shrine symbolizing long marriages? Who knew? Maybe the beginning was never as fragile as it seemed. My favorite person to write about is Tom, and he never ceases to amaze me with all the things he may come up with, some good and some bad. But my favorite piece that I have ever written about him is a piece called Dining Out with Harkin. Harkin is the most reluctant diner. Even selecting a restaurant can be a frustrating chore. His list of possibilities is endless in any given city. To winnow out his options, he makes numerous phone calls, exploring menus, dress, reservations, facilities for children, and entertainment. He wants dinner to be perfect. Can you give us a table with a view, he asks. Do you make your own pasta? Do you serve Bombay gin? Does the children's menu include appetizers? He impatiently jots down innumerable details. Nothing will deflect him. Meanwhile, his wife slouches listlessly, hoping the selection process will soon be over. Once in the restaurant, Harkin becomes even more apprehensive. The atmosphere isn't as wonderful as it might be, and already he's thinking the service may not be as good. Frowning, he anxiously searches the room for the best table, and he often selects 2 or 3 and moves his entire party from one table to another. By the time the menus arrive, restaurant personnel have identified Harkin as a problem diner. His discussion of the questions regarding food origin and preparation begin. Are the pork chops from Iowa? Are the mushrooms domestic or imported? Is the asparagus fresh? I mean really fresh. You know that for sure? Assuming the waiter has tasted every available entree that evening, Harkin intends to get every last bit of information available. Harkin's wife finally has an opportunity to order. Are you sure you want that? He asks. Maybe you should think about it a little more. Rolling his eyes, the waiter completes the orders and escapes, totally undone. That wasn't so bad, Harkin says brightly. His wife reaches for her martini. Well, Tom did run for president, and the rest of the family was not too excited about this opportunity as he thought it might be. But he did run, and he had some great issues. But along the way, the campaign had a very yo-yo effect, as you might imagine. And I write, the campaign has a yo-yo effect. In some states, Tom is king of the mountain, but in others, he is barely competing. The press is everywhere. At one point, a reporter shoves a mic between Tom and me and asks, "Does this bother you?" "Of course not," I retort. "It's the most natural thing in the world." Tom thinks this is hilarious. Don't ever lose your sense of humor. But eventually, it became clear that he could not stay in the race because of lack of resources and not doing well in many states. So we called key supporters and family around the country to give them all a heads up. And in many ways, our preparations parallel those of Tom's announcement. We are organized and in control. Dropping out of the race with dignity, honesty, and humor is our challenge. Daughter Jenny is upbeat. I'm glad you're getting out because I've just about had it with this race. The auditorium at Gallaudet is packed with supporters and press. How they all came on such short notice is a mystery to me. Tom speaks to a standing room only crowd. For the last 6 months, he said, I've had the opportunity to do something very special. It has been the privilege of a lifetime that the son of a coal miner and an immigrant mother could climb the ladder of opportunity and run for the presidency of the United States of America. It's been about human dignity and justice, and about electing a president who cares, not just for the few of us, but for all of us, and for our dreams and hopes for our children. Our campaign was based on the belief that America is not some at the expense of many, but many to the advantage of all. To invest our national treasure in the skills and talents of the young, and to use government to empower and lift up, to give hope to all of us so that we can demand the best from each of us. This is what a visionary government can do. It's a bittersweet event shared with friends. Weighing on Tom is the thought that he has let people down by not being able to continue. Remind him that he has done well. His message is now part of the political dialogue, and that he has a long life ahead of him. We fly home to Des Moines, where Tom gives his speech again. And although this is sad, there's nothing quite as wonderful as being loved in defeat, especially by those who have given you the most. We're proud of you. You did a great job. You didn't embarrass us. We wish it could have been different, but we're happy you ran. This is family. We return back to Washington, where daughter Amy is waiting up for us. We talk about our life without the campaign. Tom will continue as a leader of his party in this election year, but I know his presidential race is over for sure the next morning. Instead of driving him to the airport, I watched Tom, Jenny, and Susie, our dog, walk to meet the school bus. Throughout the years that Tom was running for office and in public office, I had to decide what I was going to do. And one of the things that I told Tom is that I would work on his first campaign in 1972, running for the Congress, but I would work on that campaign, and a couple days after the election, I was going to get a job at the Polk County Legal Aid Society. And so, just out of law school, that's what I was going to do. So we were studying for the bar in Iowa, not having had the pleasure of reading one single Iowa case, of course, because we'd gone to law school out here. And along the way, the Democratic county chair in Story County came to see me, and she said, you know, I want to fill the slot of tickets all the way up and down the ballot. And it's typical of Story County, Iowa, to only vote the top of the ticket, but this time I want to fill all of these slots. For county auditor, treasurer, county attorney, you name it. And there are only 2 Democratic attorneys in this county right now, and your husband is one of them, and he's running for Congress, so you've got to run for county attorney. What? I haven't even passed the bar yet. And besides, I'm going to be a legal aid attorney, I protested. That, my dear, is irrelevant. You couldn't possibly win this race. There are no women county attorneys in any of the 99 counties in Iowa, and in Story County, there, of course, are no women attorneys except you. Not to mention that Story County, in over 100 years of existence, has only elected one Democrat who was promptly defeated 2 years later. I'm just asking you to help fill the ticket. Well, that pretty well nailed it. I didn't even bother calling Tom about this. I said, fine, sign me up. Well, against all odds, I won. The Attorney General sent us letters titled, Lady and Gentleman. One of the things, though, I noticed is that there were no women prosecutors in the state of Iowa, not just women county attorneys, there weren't any assistant county attorneys. So I decided that one of the things I could do was to hire women interns. And I remember a male law student said one time, I would really like to intern for you, but I understand you only hire women. And I said, you're absolutely right. If I don't hire women, who will? So I did. And in my future careers, I became Deputy General Counsel at the Department of Agriculture. And one of the things I noticed when we had a department of 240 attorneys, and this was during the Carter administration. And many of these women were now wanting to stay in the workforce, but thinking about traffic, childcare, you name it, they didn't see how they could continue. And I said, you know what? Why don't we let you work part-time? That way you can stay in the workforce and it won't be quite as daunting. Well, one day I got a call from the U.S. Office of the General Counsel in the Vice President's office. And he said, I see that you're working part-time, that you are working and having lawyers work part-time in your office. Yes, I said, we have some extremely talented women lawyers who are mothers or becoming mothers, and they are a bit daunted by parenting, work, traffic, and childcare. But they don't want to leave the workforce, so I agreed that they could work part-time. Well, no one else is doing this in any of the other general counsel's office. Well, it isn't against federal regulations, is it? Well, no. That's a good thing then. I'll just keep on doing it. When I was offered a presidential appointment to become president and CEO of the Overseas Private Investment Corporation in 1993, it was an organization comprised of lawyers and bankers. And this was an independent federal agency that promotes and supports private sector business investments around the world. No woman had ever headed this organization, but one of my big things that I was very happy about is by the end of my tenure, half of all the lawyers and half of all the bankers were women. So it's been a pleasure to be in that kind of a culture. When I joined the inner circle of senior management at United Technologies, I was told that hiring other women was not an option. We're just picking you, so don't try to get other women in here because you're it. I said, ooh, that sounds too good. Anyway, it was a little tough, but one moment does stand out. I was boarding one of our corporate helicopters in Hartford to fly to New York for a meeting. I walked over to meet the pilot and co-pilot on the tarmac. They turned around. They were beaming. They were women. Mrs. Harkin, what do you think? It's just the three of us going to New York. I loved it. So it's been a great career, and it's been wonderful now establishing the Harkin Institute and setting up the Tom and Ruth Harkin room, and now we're raising more money and working on the Institute and working on the issues that brought Tom to Congress and that he worked hard for to begin with. Certainly, not least among these, the ADA. So, and I will say, you know, he had such a great career, but you know, one of the things that amazes me about Tom, who else do you know that would ever be in public office that would allow his wife to tell such stories about him? Anyway, thank you very much, and thank you very, very much for coming, and I'm open to questions. Thank you.
1 second. I wanted to sort of add on something about what kind of special people Tom and Ruth are. and we bonded over a mutual love of a little bitty island, Elbow Key in the Bahamas, in this little town. I didn't know if that was on or not. In Hopetown in the Bahamas. There's just a special place, and I hope none of you ever go because we don't want to get it ruined. But anyway, it's a wonderful, wonderful place. But the kind of people Tom and Ruth are, probably 20 odd years ago, we were. I was going to speak at a conference in Paris and mentioned it to Tom and Ruth, and they said, "Well, we've got a restaurant for you, and we'll make the reservation." He said, "I've got a former staffer that's like agriculture attaché at the U.S. Embassy in Paris. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of it." So Lucy and I go to La Tour d'Argent. I'm from North Louisiana. I can't pronounce this stuff. But anyway, it's a restaurant that goes back. Is it the oldest in Paris or one of the two?
One of the oldest.
One
yeah.
of the oldest in Paris. It goes back to the 1700s. And we take the elevator up, and you're looking out at the Notre Dame across the river. It is just one of those magnificent places. And, all of the French folks come to the second seating, so they put the Americans in the first seating, So we're in the corner table window looking out at the Notre Dame, and there's a little package there at Lucy's seat. It is, and this restaurant is known for its duck, and every duck they serve is numbered from back when they first opened. And it's a Murano duck that they had left as just sort of a gift. Lucy breaks out cried. I break out crying. Anyway, those are friends. Those are friends, and those are kind, thoughtful people that made something just truly, truly special. So these are the kinds of people that Ruth and Tom are. But anyway, I'm going to turn it back to Ruth.
Thank you.
But I couldn't get out of here without sharing that because it was just a special moment.
Thank you. Any questions? Here we go. Yes.
Mrs. Harkin, thank you so much for being here today. My name is Nathan, and I'm a recent local college graduate. For several years, I have done extensive work advocating for full inclusion and acceptance of individuals who have special needs, and I have done writing and public speaking for a long time. And in that context, I truly appreciate both your dedication to the ADA and that of your family. And in particular, I've always been very moved by the story of your brother-in-law, Frank, and especially by the quote from him, I may be deaf, but I am not dumb. And I also really appreciate that the Harkin Center embraces the universal design concept. My question is in the upcoming generations, what do you think is especially important to do to ensure that the spirit of the ADA is always implemented?
Well, to keep working on it. And once a law is passed, sometimes you have to sue to make sure that people actually fulfill the law. And at the Harkin Institute and led by Tom, we continue to do research and to make it the go-to place to keep working on it and to make sure we don't backtrack.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Would you mind briefly saying something about your brother-in-law, Frank?
Well,
what was he like?
He was a wonderful, wonderful guy, and he was very independent, and he called everything just as he saw it. And he was great. And we were just so happy he was able to get jobs and do well at them. And that's it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So very nice to meet you and be here. I'm originally from New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and I taught travel and tourism, and I had a student who wanted to go into the hotel profession, but she was wheelchair bound. She lost the use of her legs when she turned 4, so that's when So, setting her up for the internship at hotel, pardon me, in I think it was York, Maine, taught them a lot about ADA. They didn't pitch their ramps properly and things like that. So the encouragement of any institutions that the students that are in wheelchair situations, that having her go out into a workforce as an intern really taught the local, the industry people what it meant to, have the right requirements for their ADA wheelchair situation. So,
And the more and more people that are integrated into the workforce, the better we are, right? Yeah. Any other questions? No, it is a shy crowd. Well, you have to come to the podium, so that makes it tougher.
Mrs. Harkin,
Yes.
it's not really a question. Well, it is. I've known Tom and Ruth a long time. Sure. Are you still teaching people how to crab?
Tom, did you hear that? She said, "Are we still teaching people how to crab?" Not recently.
Well, being from Iowa, but going to the beach with Ruth and others on the Eastern Shore when I worked for Tom, I didn't know how to crab. Ruth taught me, and now I live in Ohio, and I taught a whole lot of other people how to crab at the Eastern Shore.
Well, and thanks so much. I think you drove 6 hours to get here, so
Oh.
we really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
I grew up in Iowa too, and worked in the Congress for John Culver. But when Harris selected Waltz, a friend of mine said, "Isn't it great? Midwestern Nice is back." But what has happened? I mean, when you think about people like the two of you in politics in Iowa, and then you think about the people in politics today, I mean, what happened to Midwestern Nice?
Well, it got lost, and we ask ourselves that. I will say I'm delighted that Tom ran and won during extraordinarily productive years in the Congress. Because the truth of the matter is, so many of the wonderful things he worked on, he could never, ever get past today. Yeah. The ADA could never be passed. And I hope that Walz and Harris and can put a new spin on things and we can turn it around. But that's it. Hi.
Hi, Mrs. Harkin. What a wonderful set of readings you just did. Just amazing.
Thank you.
And there were several questions I had, but the one that I wanted to ask most of all was all the work that you did to bring women into the workplace, to recognize the gender constraints that they had, and to really be one of the pioneers in that. The world is different today, and women do have more of an opportunity. But what advice would you have for younger women today to continue that process of ensuring that women are respected and are able to really achieve as high-level positions as you were able to?
Well, to get in the room, when you think about it, in order to be effective any place and to make gains, you have to be in the room where things happen. You just have to be there. And if you're not in the room, you cannot try to get things ahead and to get more people. So I would certainly advise women not to be shy about trying out for anything, no matter what, because it can always be very, very helpful getting more women into the workforce. But right now we're having some real backtracks in terms of women's health care, and we certainly don't want to go back to that, but we've got to keep working. I remember just in Iowa, we didn't even pass a law in Iowa until in the early 70s that meant that women could inherit farm property in their own right. If their husbands died before they did, they had to prove that they had contributed 50% to the ownership of the property before they could inherit that. So that was in 74, 75. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Actually, I was going to ask you one more question.
Okay.
This is more about, I don't know if you want to say anything about your gardens and why they're so meaningful to you.
Well, again, I like solitary pursuits, and gardening is certainly one of them. And so I'm a lifelong gardener, and I have a lot of great gardens. I built and put together with a landscaper architect a place in the Bahamas when we rebuilt our house. And it occurred to me that I was too old to be planting 3 feet tall plants. So I decided to go a little expansive and plant everything 6 or 7 feet. So I mentioned to my husband that I was thinking of putting some real money into a garden. And he said, I don't care what you plant as long as you can't see the house from the road. And I said, don't worry.
And that concludes today's events. Give Ruth and Charlie a big round of applause.
Okay. Thank you.